Hello, hello, my Tuesday night family. Let's talk Tuesday. I missed you last week. So it's so fun to be back together. Hi, Drina, watching from the sweetest sides of Detroit, Michigan in the USA. Awesome. I did some work in Detroit several years ago. I had a good time when I was there. E-Rock. It's the E-Rock. I love it. How are you, Eric? Hi, Brooklyn. It was great to see you, although we didn't get a chance to talk. Charles, I see West Virginia. It's super exciting to be back with you. And tonight is going to be fun. We got to keep it different and keep it popping for you guys and keep you guessing what's going to happen from Tuesday to Tuesday. And tonight we have a special guest, and I'm super excited. You picked a good night to come be a part of the Tuesday family. So I'm going to list a few credits. And I'll give you one hint. He is an actor. And so I'm going to give you a few credits and then see if you can kind of guess. And then we'll, reveal it. So Courageous, October Baby, Mom's Night Out, War Room, God's Compass, Champion, Family Camp, An Unlikely Angel. Are you guys, is it coming to you? You have a sense? Sherry thinks she knows. Okay. Well, let's see. We have a little bit that'll reveal our wonderful special guest. You guys are good. I think Diego has a video piece. But
hey guys, everybody, my fans and everyone. This is Beverly Holloway.
This is Robert Amaya.
I love Beverly. Look, first of all, she's one of the best casting agents on the planet. In fact, she casted me in my first few films, which is amazing. How many times have you casted me now? I'm kidding. I'm like,
I
have done everything to offend you. The whole thing was a lie.
Okay, good, because I was
Yes.
Of course. I've casted you because I'm a casting agent. That's what I do.
Oh, man.
You guys, it's Robert Amaya, the Robert Amaya. See, everyone's super excited. We are so thrilled. This is our little Tuesday night family. We get together and we chat and laugh and answer questions. So Jewel, casting agent, thank you for the laughing emojis. Yeah. The history behind it is he did a talk and must have said casting. He's talking to a room full of people. Of course, the room's full because it's Robert Amaya and he's sharing wisdom. And he must have said casting agent. I'm 12, 15 times. So afterwards, I went to Diego. So Diego manages me, but he also manages Robert. In fact, I have Robert to thank for the fact that Diego's managing me. But I went to Diego and said, Diego, can you please tell Robert that I'm a casting director? There is no such thing as a casting agent. And there is no such word as casted. You guys, we've all talked about that, right? Casted. Anyway, I love you though, Robert. We have just had too much fun. So then they pranked me. I had no idea. I'm thinking he's just saying it over and over. And I'm looking at Diego like if looks could kill. It was like, why didn't you tell him?
Just to see how much you could squirm, how much we can make Beverly squirm in the hot seat.
It.
Right. It was one of those things where, of course, I know it's casting director. And all of a sudden, you say the wrong thing, and it just sticks to you. And when you think back, I remember because Diego came up to me and he goes, "By the way, it's casting director." And I'm going, "Oh, the most sinking feeling ever." But casted was not mine. That was all Diego. Diego original right there. Casted.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
but
casted
anyway,
wasn't yours. But you know what? I will say you did. You set a good example for all of our actors who are on the stream because when you said it once, then you stuck with it, right? You just stayed
Yeah,
in
well,
there and committed to it, right? So it's like once
yeah,
you make a decision in an audition, you just
you
go
guys,
with it. You just stick with it. So
so
Rob,
true.
I listed off a bazillion credits, of course, all wonderful, wonderful films. So how did you get into this whole acting thing? Like, was that always your plan?
Certainly not in film. In film, I kind of got into it uh, almost by accident, almost just. Here's what happened. What happened was I had a friend of mine who had told me about this audition. Now, my first film was Courageous, and my friend was a huge Kendrick Brothers fan, and he was a producer, and he heard, through the grapevine that they were casting a Latino male for this new role in this new movie that they're doing. And so he came to me saying, "Hey, you qualify, right? You're Latino, so go ahead and send your stuff in." And to me, as much as I would have loved to have been in a movie and the Kendrick Brothers, I always thought of that as something unreachable. There's no way that would ever happen. So I didn't do anything. I didn't submit anything. Well, long story short,
Robert,
weeks. I know, absolutely the worst. Are you sure you still want me as a guest? I'm giving the worst
I
advice ever.
love you.
So I go, and like weeks later, he comes back to me at church because we were at church. He's a friend of mine from church, fellow brother. And this time, well, he comes to me and he says, "Hey, about that audition, I never saw that you submitted anything. Are you still planning to?" But he said it in front of my wife. It wasn't in front of my wife before. This
Oh,
time it was. Thank God for amazing women in our lives, because at that moment, my wife just looked at me and was like, "What's he talking about? We're going home right now, and you're submitting that stuff in." And that's kind of like what I did. I submitted stuff. I got a call the next day. Get this, Bev, and I'm going to try to make it short. But the next day, I get a call from the casting director, not casting agent,
mwah,
a casting
mwah.
director, who's helping out, which was, of course, Terry.
Yeah.
And she calls me to tell me, "Robert, we've seen like 200 people for this role, and we have to pick from somebody that we've already seen. So I'm calling you as a courtesy because I saw you sent your stuff. I didn't want you waiting around thinking that maybe something would happen." So she called me to tell me there's no chance that I could get the role. But in true Southern hospitality, which is what I always say, because they're from Atlanta, and she just kept talking on the phone and talking and talking and talking, and about 30 minutes later, no lie, and I
Uh,
always say it's the longest letdown I've ever had. 30 minutes later, she tells me, "Robert, there's just something about you I like. I'll tell you what. I don't make any promises, but I'm going to send you a scene, and if you film yourself and send it to me, I'll show it to the brothers." And of course, that ended up being the infamous Snake King scene. And well, the story went from there. But that's how I got involved. I kind of stumbled. I had a wife who was, just demanding that I
yeah.
go immediately and submit my stuff. But a big lesson learned. A big lesson
Yeah.
learned that day for sure.
Yeah. Now, it's a really good example though, because I've always said that God's the ultimate casting director. And if there is someone he wants or needs in a role because of what's going to come after, or because of, what the work that he's trying to do, there's nothing I can do to make it happen or not make it happen, right? I
Hmm.
can't stop the will of God. And certainly I hope I never do. We always hope to be listening and open eyed in my case to where God's sort of leading me, but it's proof, right? If that's where he wanted you and you were the one he was going to make it happen. So he probably tried
Absolutely.
the opposite. The easy way was, God saying, "Oh, I'll just tell this man to tell Robert, and Robert will do it, and this will be great."
Never
And
the
then
easy way
Robert
with me.
doesn't do it.
Never the easy
So
way
then
with
God
me.
says, "Okay, then I need to bring Robert's wife into it, and then maybe
Yes.
he'll do it."
Yep,
I
that's
love it.
exactly it. That's exactly it. But it goes to show you though, if there's one thing to know, however, is if my resume and headshot would have never made it into the hands of that casting director, I would have certainly never had a chance. Even when I was called to be told I had no chance, God said there was a
Yes,
chance. But if I
yes,
wouldn't have
yes,
submitted
yes.
stuff, there really truly would never have been a chance.
And even in that, you could have cut off the conversation. You could have, been frustrated and chosen not to continue. Like all of that was you being open to what God was doing, even though
Yeah.
it just meant you were taking steps one in front of the other, and the others involved being open. That's one of the things that you and I both love about the Kendricks, is that everything they do is them sitting back and saying, okay, Lord, what do you want this to be? Where are we supposed to go? How should we move forward? And so they're really open to what is happening and seeking God. They don't go in and say, here's our agenda. Okay, God,
Right.
would you please bless it? No, it's a very open-handed, kind of loosely held approach. So of course, them being
Yeah.
willing to look at something is great.
And maybe you might even agree, but I always tell people too, like, you've got to always be courteous and always be kind, and because these are still human beings. I mean, Bev, you're a human being. It's like, so
I try.
you have emotions, and if I'm just a jerk on the phone, you better believe that's going to stick with you, and it'll stick with my name until God might hopefully provide a different opportunity to prove differently. But so you got to be courteous every opportunity that you get, because maybe it's not that role, but the next time, oh, that person's super kind, right? I don't want to speak for you, but I'm imagining, because I'm always thinking as an actor, I want to be as kind as I can be. Maybe I don't get that part, but boy, will they remember me. They'll remember my personality. I might even make them laugh right there on the spot, or just feel like, when I leave the room, they're like, he was great. Like, we really enjoyed him. We'll keep an eye out for that guy.
Yeah, it's interesting because today I was talking on one of the projects that I'm working on right now. I was talking to the director on the phone, and we're trying to talk through the callback and like potential chem read schedule and everything. And he said he was making a point that he wanted to make sure in our schedule there was time for him to have conversations with the ones that were kind of honing in for the leads. He said, because I want to get to know them. I want to get to know what it would be like to work with them, and how we sort of gel and meld. And that's as big a priority to him as is the audition, right?
Well, and it's, I would imagine it's like, you should still treat it like you would any other kind of employment. You don't want to be a jerk. You want to be as kind. You want people to feel that you're a team player, that you're there to accomplish, a goal that everyone's sharing. And certainly in the Christian space, you want to show that you've got these other attributes that are godly and kind and even forgiving sometimes.
Right, absolutely. Well, I want to encourage you guys, if you have questions, this time it's not just questions for casting, it's questions for Robert, who is just cranking and doing wonderful things with film, and both dramatic and comedic. That's one of the things I really love about you, Robert, is that you can take a really funny moment and then shift it into a very meaningful moment. And that is not easy to do. So I think very highly of your ability to be relatable on both ends, which is important. So, and you can get people who can make you laugh, but can they bring it down to a place where it feels very honest and very vulnerable and very real? And that's really the trick. And that's a real gifting of yours. So you guys, please, if you have any questions for me or for Robert, please let us know. Diego will keep his eye out and see if there's any questions so far. Okay, Robert, can you provide advice for auditions?
Well, first of all, actually do them. don't give up before you start. How about there? Like, actually do them.
When someone hands it in your lap.
Yeah, exactly. Don't say, yeah, right. Don't wait for your wife to have to make you do it. I think one of the advices I find myself giving a lot more lately, because it's something I've had to learn myself too, is when you find your character, when you find the person or that persona that you think is going to show the best parts of your ability within that character, within the context of what you've been given, that character is supposed to be like, stick with it. And don't get anxious those 30 seconds before you go up, to be in front of people, in front of the casting director. Don't start freaking out. Don't let yourself get into that mind space where you're lost, because even though you may not share it, you can see it behind the eyes. And so stick with it, hold fast to it, and then give it the best thing that you've got. Because in the end, and again, you can correct me, Beth, but I feel like as an actor, an audition is not just for one part. An audition, you're auditioning to be remembered.
On the nose.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
you bring up such a good point, Robert. You many times, I was explaining to some people at the conference this last week that the way that Dallas chooses to cast The Chosen is, so every season we have about 100 to 120 roles to cast every season. So those would be new roles to cast every season. But he only picks about 12 to actually use for auditions. So he prefers to kind of choose 12 that cover the gamut of age and type and male and female ethnicity, all of that. And then everyone sort of uses those 12 roles from which he casts another 120, right? And so you really do need to think of it like that. You're not just auditioning for one role. It is so common that we switch things around. Now, have you ever auditioned for a role and then been offered or ended up in a different role?
I feel like it's happened more than once, but a lot of it comes from rewrites and stuff. I can tell you this. I can tell you that there are times where I've gone out for a role, and based on the audition, they decided to amplify what my part was going to be. I mean, that was a huge compliment to me, of course, and it was thrilling. But again, it's going in with that mindset that I'm not just in it for this one restrictive or this one part. I'm auditioning for a spectrum of things, and so I got to give my best performance right here. They made changes to even the character in order to fit what I had done. And I've seen that a couple of times. Again, even starting with Courageous. I often make mention, if you read the original script, the description of Javier was, of course, Latino, but then it was like 6'2" and thin as a rail. And unless, I know it's not obvious on the internet, but I'm not 6'2", you know what I'm saying? So,
no.
Yeah. So, but anyway, the point is, I kind of gave it this feeling, and they loved it. They went with it, and then they listened to me. And so that camaraderie that forms just because you were able to be kind, courteous, and give your best performance at an audition.
Yeah, they'll listen to you if they trust you based on the work you were doing, because then they trust that you know what you're doing, that you understand the mechanism of what is needed and kind of how to access that. So that's a huge compliment. Any of you have your roles expanded as a result of what you bring to the table, man, that's just huge confirmation. Absolutely. Donna House, did Robert have an agent at the time or training in acting?
So I did not. I often say that God was my best and still is my best agent. I did not have one. I didn't know what to do. You heard my story and how I got into it. I stumbled onto it really through word of mouth. But I did have an agent for a while, and things didn't work out that way. So I'm in a position where luckily I don't need to go out and hunt as hard, let's say. But I think where God led me is to make sure that I'm surrounded by the right people and the right team, whether that's an agent, because I'm not here to speak against agents. I think agents are great. They do a fantastic job. Right. And when you find a good one and they want to work with you, I mean, by all means, you go with it. But in my story, I ran across Diego, which was, first he was a friend. You got to know him really well. He was a fan of the industry. And I saw that he had a passion for the mission aspect of Christian film. And so as we talked, for me, it was, hey, you're really organized. You're a motivator. I could use this. Have you thought about getting into management? And he already had a little bit of experience, and it was a match made in heaven. I mean, he's fantastic, and people see it all the time. He's an encourager and stuff. So God has put together the team. I just had to keep my eyes open to make sure that the people that I'm adding onto my team are going to be beneficial to me. And if
Yeah.
they're not, don't get stuck with the rules that everyone else is playing by. If an agent is not right for you at that moment,
Hmm.
don't go that route. But do they bring credibility? I mean, certainly it's going to be better than somebody shows up green, without one. So
Right.
those things are
Right.
true. That's just the nature of the game. I can
Right.
imagine you're seeing hundreds of people in one shot. You kind of have to find a way to separate those that might be serious as opposed to those that may not. But it doesn't mean that you have to do it that way.
Right.
Yeah, that's probably the best way.
Well,
That's a
and it
long
is
answer for a simple question.
no, but it's true though, and it is further, I think, example of, again, if that God called you to that project, you just didn't know. You didn't know you were being called to that project. So once you did Courageous, of course, it was, well accepted and very successful. So then all of a sudden you're an actor. Now you're Robert the actor, the film star. Um, was there ever a point at which you then, as you thought about what's next, did you think about going like fully secular, or were you always committed to go stories of faith and inspirational route? Did you try to do both for a while? So what, you finished Courageous and now you're in this whole new universe. What was that like for you as far as where you go next?
Right after Courageous and shortly afterwards, I had done October Baby almost immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
But finishing those two films, I had such an amazing time on both sets. I mean, on a Kendrick set, you are honoring God left and right. I mean, those sets are fantastic in terms of just the spiritual component
Yeah.
and the purity of how the mission is upheld. And what I mean by that is like there is constant prayer on set. The
Yeah.
Kendricks, they put up makeshift chapels so that you can go and have time with the Lord or time to just seek forgiveness if you're going through stuff, which you don't find usually on set, even on Christian sets a lot of
Right.
times.
Right.
And so they're so devoted, and I had such a great experience with that style and that devotion to the Lord. And then and the Irwins, the same thing. Irwins are so dedicated to God, but they're so dedicated to telling such fantastic stories and
Yeah.
how to film those stories. And so as I finished those films, yeah, there was like a almost, I don't want to call it a crisis, but it was a crossroads. That's what I want to say. It was a
Yes.
crossroads because
Yes.
I did think, offers were coming in, and I thought to myself, which route do I want to take? Do I want to go fully secular and family? Do I want to do both? I never felt like there was anything evil about any one of those options, to be clear.
Absolutely.
But in the end, where I landed was simply, well, first of all, like I said, God was being the best agent, and He was bringing me work that was constantly within the faith-based space.
Hmm.
I also fell in love with this area of film because it was at that time it was still developing. I mean,
Yeah.
the Kendrick brothers, when they released, they were already fantastic storytellers. When they released, Facing the Giants, they became popular even with the secular crowd. It was very memorable,
Right.
fireproof. And then when it came time to Courageous, so certainly there's an evolution where these films are getting better and better. The Irwin brothers, I mean, they hit this industry like a storm. It was fantastic. There's the cinematography in their movies and stuff. So I saw it getting better. So I didn't feel like I was missing out, but God was just bringing me Christian films. And furthermore, where I landed personally is simply that I wanted to do movies that I could take my daughters to. I have two girls. One's now 14, the other one's 7. But at the time, I mean, that was 10 years ago. I wasn't even born yet.
Right.
And I just wanted to be able to make movies that I could take them to. And, even back then, we saw that movies were beginning to change. Agendas were changing, messages were changing. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to always screen stuff before I could just go and have a good time. And I wanted to give that to people that followed me and that knew my name and perhaps wanted to see a movie that I was in, that they knew they could take the family to it and they didn't have to be worried about its content and they would ultimately have a good time.
Yeah. Which is so important because I think of you and like Lee Allen Baker, who we got to spend some time with.
Love Leah.
Of course, both of you guys, I do too. Both of you guys from Family Camp. We need in the faith space people who make us laugh. Like we need that. Laughter is a part of how God created us. Laughter is an inherent part of how he built us, right? And how
That's
we
right.
cope with stress and just how we relate to each other. It is a part of who God created us to be. And so it, as someone who's been in the faith film space for now almost 30 years, I cannot tell you the number of times, like usually the tissue box is on the desk in auditions, and every project it was one or more characters just crying and bawling, and just because it's always so dramatic. And that is important because heart change and life change and transformation. But man, when we did the auditions for Mom's Night Out, I had so much fun. We were just laughing, and it was just such a nice contrast, And I feel like the message of that film was just as powerful, but it was such a entertainment and a relief to just be able to laugh. I'm telling you, if any of you guys saw Mom's Night Out, my favorite scene is when they're pulled over and the little girl has the bird and he killed Mama. And then that starts the whole chase and everything else. Just moments like that when we can just laugh are so important. I mean, it's an important part of who we are. So love that. I love that you're bringing comedy to it, and that you're setting that example, that comedy is a legit way to do storytelling for sure. So
Absolutely.
what is something you do to help your work that is outside of acting?
What is something that I do that helps my work outside of acting? Well, for starters, I love doing children's ministry for many reasons. It does help with the acting for sure, but doing children's ministry, children are so pure emotionally, and they wear their emotions on their sleeves that you know right away how they're feeling, and you know right away how you're acting. If you're doing a show and and they don't like it, they're gonna know it. But if they're loving it, the applause, the laughter is gonna be there. You're gonna know it right away. But working with kids helps my emotional intelligence. Just it helps me grow, be more of an empath in terms of connecting with the audience. And it also, this is the next generation. So you get to get a peek as to what's coming, what kind of things make them laugh, what kind of things get them going. Even when you're with slightly older, with maybe the preteens or getting into the early teens, this crowd, you will know right away, like what is cool that's coming up, what's working, what's not. And that's great because it gives you a heads up, not only in your acting, but it gives you a heads up in terms of the mission. I said this is a mission for me too, a holy mission, and I want to be able to connect as many people as I can ultimately to the Lord. And so it allows me to find the avenues even in the future and start developing those things within the space that I have influence to be ready for when they come up. So yeah.
It's really, I think, I'll speak for myself, which echoes what you were saying, to be in an environment where either people have no idea what you do and it doesn't matter at all, and you're just a person like they are. It's not the industry, it's not, little kids don't try to position next to you to get a role in your next film. You know what I mean? They're just pure. They're just there, and they relate to you as a mentor and someone who has wisdom. And I think that's so valuable in this business that tells us completely warped messages about who we are and what success means for us, and where we find our value. And these little kids don't know what your box office numbers, they just think
Right.
you're
They don't care.
funny, and
Yeah.
exactly, they don't care.
They
They'll
don't
be
care.
like, yeah, tell us a joke, Mr. Amaya,
Yeah.
or Snake King if they
Yeah,
call you
exactly. Yeah.
that. I love it. I
You
love
know,
it.
and that's the beautiful part of it
Mhm,
is that it's so pure and
mhm,
bringing a smile into their faces. I mean, outside of just it's a joy to have kids smile and laugh, but it makes you feel good that you're doing something
mhm.
right.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, Kristen, hi, Kristen. Question for Robert! Exclamation point. What is your dream role? No restrictions, no barriers, you name it.
I want to be Captain Cuba for Marvel. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That's maybe that's a nightmare role for most people. But
Yeah.
no, I honestly sincerely love to see a like legit Christian superhero.
Mm,
Not like the likes we've seen, and that's a very tough thing to do.
yes.
And I'm not pretending that I know even how to do it. I'm just saying I would love to be able to play some kind of like, mutant or something that just has some special power, and somehow in this storyline we can still
Yeah.
be glorifying God in the process. But that's what I mean. I don't know how to do it, but that's a dream.
Right.
No, she said no holding back.
Yes.
And then I'll tell you this though, I would love. I'm gonna throw this out there, and I don't think I've said this much, but I would love to do a film. Maybe somebody had this question. I would love to do a film with Kevin James. I
Mm,
think Kevin James and I would have a ball on screen.
hysterical. Yeah. Oh, it
Yeah,
would be.
yeah.
Yeah. You'd be well matched. Because Kevin
Well, you know
has
what?
that
Yes,
same
yes.
skill of doing um hilarious comedy and then tugging at the heart, at the same time.
Exactly,
But
exactly. And I learned
um
a lot from watching Kevin James for sure. Yeah, when I did Mom's Night Out, Patricia Heaton actually, we were filming our little dance battle at the bowling alley, and
yeah,
Patricia Heaton, I made her laugh. She came up to me, and Patricia Heaton, she essentially in her shows started Kevin James, his
yeah.
career, like helped launch him and stuff, and and she said, you know, you remind me of like a Latino Kevin James, and that to this day was probably the greatest compliment she ever gave me. So yeah, there it is.
Yeah. Okay, all you writers out there, be thinking, what's the film that you can put
There you go.
Robert in with Kevin James? And I'll try to help you get Kevin James. And I think we can get Robert, maybe. At least I know I know a guy who can get to him anyway. Rhonda Lynn is asking you, what process do you use to memorize lines?
So the way I do it is I try not to memorize it uh, um, in a like an intellectual way. I don't want to
Mhm.
memorize words. What I try to do is I'll read my lines and I try to visualize what's happening, and
Mm,
I try to insert myself into that space. A lot of times I'll close my eyes and I will move around and I'll feel the words and the circumstances. And I prefer to feel it and be real about what the
mm,
circumstances are. A lot of times, and you need to have a director that's okay. And also, if it's a Shakespeare movie, you can't change the lines.
right.
But a lot of times the lines that'll come out aren't necessarily exactly what's written. And if you have a director that's okay with that, not everyone is, and that's okay. You got to do
Right.
what you got to do as an actor. But a lot of times what people see is those lines that are coming out are way more sincere and real and organic,
Hmm. Hmm.
because an actor's paid to live that out and to be that role.
Right.
I heard somebody say over the weekend at ICFF that it's being within a pretend circumstances, and
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
it's that it's
Yeah.
so I try to absorb my lines to the point that as I'm feeling stuff in that scene, I don't need to remember every word that's in there. They're naturally just part of that emotion, and it'll come out.
Yeah, that's really great because I do get a lot of questions about improv and can you change the lines a little bit? I think that what you're talking about, um, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when you're at that point in the process, you've already talked to the director and you've already kind of figured out a game plan for how you're working together. So if the director had said to you, Robert, I need it word for word, like I'm the writer,
that's
director,
happening.
and you're right, then you do it. But that trust you were talking about earlier that you develop between you as an actor and the director, a mutual trust and respect, allows him to trust that he can give you some leeway and that you won't take it too far, right? You aren't all of a sudden, your goal isn't to
I'm not
rewrite the
rewriting.
scene and make,
Yeah,
exactly.
No,
Your
I'm not getting a
goal
writing
is-
credit. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a different, that's not a me agenda. That's what will serve this scene best, what will serve the
Yeah,
dialogue best when
and
you're,
you're right, Bev. I don't want to mislead. First of all, you got to earn that trust.
Mhm,
And so certainly you look at my early work. Well, you look at Courageous. Courageous was about as close as you can get to word, word to word,
right.
because I respected everyone involved, and they didn't know me yet. It's the first time I'm in a film, so I knew I had
Right.
to earn their trust and earn their trust. But as time went by, and I did more films, and I'll always go to the director if we're doing a quick rehearsal, and I'll say, "Hey, I want to show you something if we have time. I'd like to show
Mm,
you this." And that's when that interaction will happen. But if I don't
yeah.
get an opportunity to have that interaction and I don't have a pre-existing relationship with that director, I'm still trying to earn it. I don't care what I've done in the past. I have to
Yeah.
respect the work. I will do it as written, unless I'm given the opportunity to show something else.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right.
Yeah. That's wise. Just because you can improv doesn't mean it's the right choice, but sometimes it's wonderful and great, you know. So I know recently you did a 20th anniversary of Courageous. Was that what it is? Like
It was
the
10th,
legacy,
10th, the
Courageous
10th.
10th.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, I'm making us all way older than
I was
we
like, man,
are.
did that really happen? I was like, wait.
Back in the day when you did. um,
Sneaking. Yeah. Yeah, 10 years ago.
so Courageous was your first film. You were a green actor. You were just starting out. So what was it? And Kevin Downes, Kevin Downes eh, did a lot of stuff between Courageous One and Courageous Legacy. And I'm sure the same thing with Ben Davies, of course,
Yeah.
done a lot of work. So how was that kind of difference between you as these young kind of green actors to the legacy piece? What was that like for you guys?
When I found out that we were going to film this new ending, I remember I was in New York celebrating my anniversary with my wife when I got a call from Stephen Kendrick, and the first words after I answered the phone, his first words were, "We're getting the band back together, baby," and that pretty much encapsulates what it felt like. It just
Yeah.
felt like we were this part of this awesome band, this great team. We did it, and then we came back together to do something special. So seeing everybody's faces, revisiting these characters, these
Right.
personas, and in front of each other once again, it was beautiful. And if guys haven't seen Legacy, the Legacy edition, you've got to see it. It's, in my opinion, the best edited version. It did get re-edited. It's the best version of Courageous, but that ending is absolutely just it's so warm and so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah. It came out during COVID, right? So I think
Yeah.
not everyone even really knew that it had come out. So if you guys, like you said, if you've never seen Courageous at all, of course, go see Courageous Legacy, or exit. It's streaming and available different platforms. But even if you saw the first Courageous, revisit, because it is a new edit, and you'd be surprised at how much an editing shift here and there will change the tone, the pace. It really can make a big difference. And then, of course, we visit the characters 10 years later. So what a great,
good.
it's not very often you get such a full circle moment, right?
No, I never thought that would happen, and
Yeah.
it did feel like that. This full circle moment, and where I got to step in Javier's shoes once again and interact with these people, and it was so beautiful. And I think we all felt it too. There was
Yeah.
just magic,
Yeah.
you know, in the air, so to speak. It
Yeah.
was great.
And this, to tie it back to, you know, talking with the actors and trying to give little tidbits of wisdom, this kind of goes back to how you are on set, how you treat your fellow actors, how you treat the crew. How, if you had been a nightmare to work with, they would have found your sweet Snake King character would have been bit by a snake and had died,
Yeah,
and they would have all been attending your funeral because they would not have brought you back, you
yeah,
know.
no,
So you just never know. You want to just leave it. It's you want to leave a place hopefully better than, you know, when you guys all started. So um,
yeah.
I see a couple of, let's see, one more question. I saw one. Oh, there we go. Eric Rock Van Druff. He has the best hair, like the best hair. I wish you all could. Well, you can see it a little
Well,
bit
I
in
can
his
see a little bit
picture.
right there. Yeah,
Oh man,
rocking it,
he's got the
E-Rock.
mane. Yeah. Really good guy. Anyway, what is a favorite story you have as an actor? Any funny or memorable moments?
Oh man, so many to choose from.
Yeah.
But you know, maybe this isn't the answer you're looking for, but after Courageous, that movie meant so much to so many people. And
Mhm.
like almost every Kendrick movie, I think every single one, it's always timely. They get these messages from God that just tells them what to do, when to
Yeah.
do it, because it always seems to be timely. And Courageous came out at a time when there was, you know, what I like to call sometimes a male crisis,
Yeah.
and it was about calling guys to just come back home, to be good men, be good dads, and be good
Yeah.
husbands. And so the movie touched a lot of people, and I'll never forget the weekend. It was a weekend after the opening weekend, and I was at a local grocery store. I lived in Miami. I was in a local grocery store. Um, People were starting to sometimes recognize me and what have you, but you know, I was in my neighborhood. I didn't think much of it. And this young girl, she was with her. She had two sisters and a younger brother, and she was the eldest. She might have been about 16, and she kept looking at me, and I didn't know what was going on. Still getting used to people recognizing me.
Right.
But then as I'm walking out, you know, she stops me and she says, "Robert," she said, "Oh, I'm sorry." She says, "Excuse me, are you the guy from the movie?" And I said, "If you mean Courageous, yeah, that's me." And her eyes just got red, and then she started crying. And
Oh.
I was like, "Sweetheart, are you okay?" And she says, "No, I'm fine. You don't understand. My dad and my mom have been separated for almost a year now. And then he took us to go see a movie, and he thought it was an action movie about these cops. And he took us all to go see the movie, and he took us with his girlfriend. And when he saw the movie, he and his girlfriend split up. They didn't even say a word to each other. And he cried and he said, "I'm sorry" to me. And he came home with us and apologized to my mom.
Oh my
And
gosh.
today he's coming back home. And I
Oh my
lost it.
gosh.
I cried with this young girl in the grocery store. People must have
Oh
been
my
like,
gosh.
"What is happening?" But that moment for me was just the beginning. Stories like that, I mean,
Oh
honestly, they're
yes.
countless. But it's what right away sealed for me on that first film that what I'm doing is not about me.
Mm.
And what I'm doing is never when people recognize me, they're not coming to praise me. They're coming to tell me stories of what God's doing in their lives. So
Yeah.
that's my
Oh my
favorite story of all the
gosh.
times of all the films I've done. It wasn't in the movie, but it was because of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, when you say that, of course, there's so many different filmmakers within the faith film world, right? And you have the Irwins who tend to go a little more kind of in between, kind of cross the bridge between the mainstream secular and the faith audience. And that's their gifting, right? That is their gifting. That's what God's called them
Beautiful.
to do. Um, and different filmmakers and actors are called to be right in the trenches of secular entertainment, and that's what God's gifted them to do. But then there are those that are called to make the films like the Kendricks do. And whether that's a path that's consistent with yours or not, you cannot argue with the changed lives. You just cannot. It's so important. We talk about making films for the choir, right? You're preaching to the choir. Well, I'm sorry, but the choir needs to be preached to. And I've been in choir a lot. So, I need it. So I just love that. It's just so, that's what it's all about. When you say, like, what do you want to spend your long days and hard work and hours doing? That film changed that family's life, that little girl's life.
It was all worth it. It was all of it was worth it at that moment. Yeah.
It's a hard business and it's hard work. But at the end of the day, there's no better outcome, like that's why you do it. That's exactly why you do it. So, Robert, I love you so much. You are awesome. And would you please come back with us sometime? Because we could talk about so many things.
For sure. I say we do it again and we get into the industry and we talk a little bit, back and forth about some of the deeper issues and the deeper things that we really could benefit from knowing.
And one of the conversations I think would be good to have, and I would love to have, is about diversity in the faith space and how we do that better. And, obviously you're coming at it from someone who is diverse and what that looks like to you. And I just think that's an important conversation, one that we need to keep moving forward in, but there's a lot of other of those. So gosh, we could just talk for hours, but we won't. We'll save it for next time.
Go on.
So love you, Robert. You're awesome, and love all of our Tuesday night family. And it's great to just be here with you guys and just see your questions. I saw a lot of questions that we didn't get to, but just know we're here every Tuesday, so we'll do it again. And we'll let you know when we're gonna do the next Tuesday monologue too, guys. So just hang in there, but appreciate you and appreciate you coming together. And Robert, you're the best.
Love you, Bev. Love you all.
You too. Okay. Good night, everybody.